everyone, and welcome back to another video. And today we're going to be looking at a trigger gauge made by a company called Boosteady, link in the description below. I paid £19.99 for this, so I wasn't expecting something amazing for the money, but it was cheaper than the other alternatives out there. I noticed that this gauge was replicated by other manufacturers for double the price, so me being me, thought I'd give the cheaper option a go first. Packaging is certainly basic and nondescript, but that's fine because you're not buying it for the packaging. I was taken back by how good the instructions were, as they were presented on a very good quality material and in colour, clearly laid out and very easy to follow. So first impressions are certainly better than I thought they would be. My old trigger gauge I couldn't find anywhere, so I had to find one for my up and coming gun reviews. This is also my first time using a digital trigger gauge. When removing the gauge for the first time, you notice how light the packaging is, and I was a bit nervous about this because I was worried about the build quality. However, the plastic moulding seemed to be better than I thought it would be, and certainly reasonably well finished. Initial impression is that it looks quite bland, but I guess it's functional and serviceable. It almost appears idiot proof, which is good when dealing with myself. There appears to be no moving parts in this at all, so I'm very curious to see how this will pan out. This doesn't come shipped with batteries, but that's fine by me as it keeps the cost down. This takes two AA batteries. As I was inserting the batteries, I noticed that the build quality is average at best, and I don't think it will take much in the way of knocks. The plastic casing surrounding the gauge is not grippy at all, and you'll notice that you'll have to certainly have a firm grip when using it. This can certainly be solved by wearing silicone gloves. As you turn the display on for the first time, it's certainly very clear and certainly a nice decent sized display. I was surprised to find out that the display is backlit, so I'm going to dim the lights just so you can see it differently. Due to the clear display, all the buttons don't seem as intimidating, and it certainly seems clear to follow. I'm going to test the gauge on a known quantity, which is my Walther CP99. On double action, the CP99's trigger pressure is around about 6.5 to 7 pounds. So I was certainly quite curious as to see what the result would be at the end of this little test. Whilst positioning the gauge on the trigger, I noticed that there was no grip at all, and it becomes very evident that it's tricky to apply. My advice to you is to put your finger on the trigger as to where you would normally place it. Then with an extremely firm grip on the gauge, replace your finger with the gauge end. Then with that continually strong grip, pull backwards in a straight line in line with the trigger. This is literally the first time I've measured this, so it's actually in line with my previous results, which is around about 7 pounds. Now with a slightly different position on the trigger, I'll do it again. The pressure needed this time was significantly higher, and this was down to the gauge being positioned higher on the trigger. Now let's try it on the lowest position of the trigger. This shows a different result again, and it's a lot lower. It is therefore very important that you place the device the same position on the trigger every time you wish to get a measurement. To aid with this, I would suggest first of all put a rubber pad on the end of the device, followed by a mark on the trigger. The mark on the trigger should exactly replace where your finger would be for normal firing. Therefore, you should get a consistent list of figures. Now to try single action mode, as this is significantly less pressure required to pull the trigger, and certainly the best mode for the most accurate level of shooting, therefore reducing movement. Well, that result isn't that surprising, as I knew it was significantly less than double action mode. Now for a closer look at the gauge. The pressure plate is totally immovable and does not flex at all, even under pressure. There is also no level of grip, so you have to be careful when using it. This can certainly be improved with the addition of a rubber adhesive pad. The item is quite obviously serviceable, but the plastic gives a certain illusion of cheap quality, which is marginally disappointing, as this could easily be improved with rubber accents here and there. The gauge weighs 126 grams with the batteries inside. At the longest edge it's 121.9 millimeters. The relative length of the device is 100.2 millimeters, and the depth is 30 millimeters exactly. The battery cover is convenient in the fact that you don't need a screwdriver. However, if it does break, you do need a screw to hold it in place. The buttons are clearly laid out and very intuitive to use. You can measure the pressure in pounds or kilos. Cycling through the different functions, you can notice you can have peak or you can have live. To my mind, live mode is not that useful because it just goes up and then you can't save the measurement and you have no idea what it was last showing you, as it instantaneously cancels itself out and goes back to zero. Peak to my mind is the best mode, as it records the last measured amount of pressure needed and remains on the display until you press delete. If you choose not to press delete and press enter, it will record the last few measurements. The gauge has a maximum reading of 12 pounds or 5.45 kilos. Given the plastic build quality, I think about 8 pounds is more realistic, certainly with prolonged use, just in case it breaks. Only time will tell, as with extended use I'm not sure if the build quality will stand up. If you enjoyed this video and would like to see others, please like and subscribe. Until then, see you again next time.